Well, I guess.
We do have a parallel system for independent sanctioning bodies too. By mandate, they're not allowed to add suspension, but they can go in and see whether there are existing suspensions for the fighters and notes to them and that kind of thing. So that there is a whole system set up for the ISKAs and KICKs, USKBAs, that kind of thing.
But now the promoters do get a lot of perks out of doing this too, because the promoter can pull his fight up, and like I said, he can see if he's put somebody in the guy's red flag, he knows, oh, I made that match, that's not going to work, without me having to check it for him. And also, his fight is advertised on their event schedule on his website, mixedmartialarts.com or MMA.tv, which is the biggest website out there for mixed martial arts. So he gets free advertising for it too from $100. It's not just that it pops up. But like I said, no promoter is going to want to let go of another $100. It's not going to be something we can afford. But football players are for wearing headgears when they first, wearing face masks when they first came out, right?
Hand raised. Can we entertain a question?
Absolutely.
Well, I was just going to say along with Jeff, as a fighter and a referee, it's a lot more helpful to be able to look on somewhere and know that this Joe Smith, this Joe Smith that the promoter has told you, that Joe Smith is. It's not nice to get somewhere and find out, you're fighting a guy that's 15-2, but Joe Smith he looked up as 2-15. It's it made a major difference, and it happens all the time. So something uniform where everybody can check. Hey, what's the guy's ID number? Get the ID number so I can do it online. I can check it as a fighter. If you can check it, to make sure no suspended. I think it's better all around. That's something that
Thanks for that input. Kerry, from of the states, you mentioned the states that have adopted your system. You mentioned the ones that aren't charging the promoters. What states are not just flat out haven't adopted this? Or maybe you know that.
I do not. Kerry,
Right now, the only state that is not, there aren't any basically. Tennessee is the only one now that isn't, that we're not getting any fees from at all.
Thank you. Well, it sounds to me like it's a no-brainer that we need to adopt this, but you gotta go through a process to do that, don't we, Ed?
Yes, sir. If we're going to charge any money for it.
Now, we're not going to charge it. What's going to happen is we're going to require the sanctioning bodies to require the promoters to register their events, the amateur events, with mixedmartialarts.com, and then they're going to get to go in there and do that. So they will pay mixedmartialarts.com directly the $100, and we'll just be saying to the sanctioning bodies, if you want to continue in business with us, you will start requiring your amateur fighters, amateur promoters to do this. Like I said, we can't do it on the pro end, but we can require the sanctioning bodies to do it on the amateur end.
But even with that adds another rule that we'll have to visit during our rulemaking time, won't we?
It's not actually a rule. It's one of our requirements for sanctioning bodies. It's going to come in the rules, just like we had to have ambulances there and doctors there.
Okay.
And just like the requirements we had, if you want to keep doing business with us, you must do this.
Yeah, we can do it that way.
You guys are the experts with this, not me.
We've needed it for a long time. I just never knew really how to fund it, to be honest with you.
Well, this way, we won't be funding promoters, the amateur promoter.
Right. I like it.
Like I said, we're the only state that's not paying them any fees for all the work they do. When FightFacts does it, they send me a bill, $7 for every file that I acquire. They send me, and they have to send them to me. But he's got a website. I just log in, and I can pull any fighter up there in MMA, which I'm on there all the time.
Question here for you.
You said something about not charging to just be on the website. Is there a difference between being on the website or getting a card?
Well, they put all fighters' records on there, whether they have a card or not.
Okay.
Like the fighters that fought in Tennessee, we haven't been issuing cards. But all the Tennessee fighters, their records are still there, even though they don't have a card. Okay, they're just records.
Federal ID.
Right, without that national ID, they still They're still on his website. They're still in his.
So are they paying for a card?
No.
What's the $100 for?
$100 that each promoter will pay
To be able to
to
look at
register
them?
his fight on there.
Is that every time they get a permit, Jeff?
Every time they have a fight, they pay $100 to the record keeper body. The promoter will pay that directly to them. It won't go through us at all.
I would think if I'm a promoter and I'm really wanting to emphasize safety, I would want to know for sure
I would want to know for
if
sure.
somebody's suspended or not. I mean, am I right? Am I?
Yeah, that's how you.
And if you're doing the matchmaking, you want to know because you set up a match, and then it gets turned into me 3 weeks after he's made the match. He's on me, and he turns it into me later, at a late date, and I say, well, I just looked up on this website. You just gave me this fight. This guy's suspended. He can't fight. Then we've got to call the other commissions and see if there's a way. What's wrong with his suspension? And there's like medical suspensions can't be lifted. Unless there's doctors involved. But it's really good for everybody. Like I said, no promoter's going to pay an extra $100, but it's good for everyone, including them.
But once again, we don't have to go any kind of process. It's just added on to that list of requirements that we have to be able to do an event. It's not a rule per se.
That's right. It's just a requirement that we request our sanctioning bodies, if they want to continue to be a sanctioning body, to follow this. We changed the rule. We changed the policy on blood work.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
Right.
And that didn't require a rule.
And on advertising also about having
Amateur.
Okay.
So, do we need to make a motion?
I would think that that'd be the appropriate thing to do.
So moved. I would make the motion to recognize, is it mixedmartialarts.com as the formal regulating body where those fighters will be recognized at.
record keeping.
Record keeping. Thank you.
That the promoters would have to sign up their fights through Mixed Martial Arts.
Precisely.
So the motion is that we now would begin to require all promoters in the state, amateur promoters in the state, to register with this record keeping authority. That's the
We're actually requiring the sanctioning body. Correct?
Require the sanctioning body
To require the promoter.
Okay.
That is what's on the
Okay. So we just want to make it sure that's clear to our who's recording our minutes here. So we've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There are none? Okay. Can I ask him about the other issue about the federal ID? And you mentioned that just a little bit, and we saw his. And can we talk about that just a little bit?
Now the reason that Tennessee charges $25 for a federal ID in boxing, that's not a mandated charge. Each state is to set it, like I said, some said 25, 20 or 50 or whatever. That's to defray our costs and the people handling it and making the card and buying the machine and mailing it out and all that.
But on the MMA side, we don't do that.
We can't because there's no law or rule because there's a federal law that requires we issue them in boxing. And so in our law it says that we'll do that and we'll charge $25. So we would have to find a way to do it. We would have to absorb the cost of issuing the national IDs to do it in MMA. So we'd probably have to get another machine and get the laminated material or whatever.
Okay.
Do we need to make a decision on the national cards or whatever?
The federal?
Yeah, in MMA it's called a national card, in boxing they're calling it a federal card. Like this card, it's a national ID on it instead of federal ID because it's not federally mandated, it's a national card. And
on the boxing side, it is federal.
it's federally mandated, correct.
What is the downside? I don't see the downside.
There is no downside, it's just that we can't charge money, so we've got to absorb the cost, which I don't think will be a huge cost. We just got to, we'll have to get another laminating machine, portable one, and hopefully that I can take with me and do them on the spot rather than having to mail them out. And I've got a portable printer, I've got a laptop, I'll just hook them up, print them off, take the picture, download it on the computer, hopefully just do it right there on the spot. Now, one thing, we don't regulate the amateurs, so I won't be at all those amateur fights. So we would have to find some way for them to come to me, and I would print them off the amateur ones, get a list of pictures and like that. But the pro-ams and the pros, I'm always there, so I can at least get the pictures and whatever and mail them out.
If it's not mandated, could it be optional and with a fee? That it might be.
Well, we
more
can't
cost
charge any
at all.
fee unless it's in the rules or laws. We can't take any money from anybody unless it's in the rules or laws.
But if we're not issuing we're not going to be issuing a license to all amateurs, only the amateurs that are in pro-ams.
Right. But we're just saying it would be a great thing, like in other states, if you do regulate amateurs, everybody gets a card.
What would be wrong with just, I mean, this is really a convenience that you're providing the fighters. Do we even really need to vote on that? $40 laminate machine?
It's just, I don't want to go buy a machine without the approval of the commission, is what I'm saying. I want to incur more cost for that.
What do they cost?
Carrie, do you know what a laminating machine costs?
It's not the machine, it would be the plastic that's more expensive than the machine.
Yeah, laminators, $30 at
Yeah,
Walmart.
it's the material for the
Or
part.
Staples.
Oh, that's not a big deal.
It's like
But she's right, it's like the printer. The printer's not expensive, it's the ink.
Yeah, right.
Well, we're talking,
It's not a lot of money then.
yeah.
That's right. It's a good idea. Just want to incur more cost for that.
Well, that's something, Mr. Chairman, or somebody, the business chairman, whoever it's going to be, could probably decide anything. I mean, if it's a.
I mean, is that something we need to, maybe something we want to table for today and visit another time?
If we're, yeah. that's-
I can at least talk with Carrie this week about taking the pictures and getting their pictures and getting a number issued to them, even if we're not issuing the card yet. That way they'll be up on his website, ID and everything. All right?
Okay.
Carrie, thank you for your time and thank you for calling in.
You're very, very welcome. Appreciate it very much. Anything you need, just give me a call and I'll be on it immediately.
Thank you again.
Okay. We're waiting on, still waiting on Anthony Manus.
About 30 minutes ago, he said he was 30 minutes away.
Okay. While we're doing that, we want to go ahead and recognize these gentlemen. Did you guys want to address this body today? Okay. Absolutely. If you would, we'll need you to identify yourself and so they can have that in the record, please.
Sir. My name is Jeremy Augusta. I am the owner of Combat Sports Insurance. I insure mixed martial arts events and gyms nationwide. And I'm based out of Johnson City.
Okay. Welcome again.
I'm Nate Jolly. I'm an ABC certified fighter and referee. I'm also a coach. And it's a little bit of everything, a little bit of judging. But a couple different things other than that. And I just really talk about insurance.
Okay.
Something I was wanting to speak to you guys about is the insurance requirements on mixed martial arts events here in Tennessee. Tennessee is one of the only states that has two different requirements for amateur and for professional. The only other state that I can think of off the top of my head is Texas. And if I'm correct, the fees that the commission collects is from professional and from pro events. Is that correct?
We don't collect fees. We require $50,000 insurance for pros, and then we mandate to the sanctioning bodies that they have to have $20,000 for amateurs.
Gotcha. There's a lot of amateur mixed martial arts in Tennessee. There's very little pro mixed martial arts in Tennessee, which is the reason XFC is coming all the way from Florida to Tennessee. I've spoken to the promoter multiple times. He loves Tennessee. Everyone comes out because that's one of the very few outlets for professional fighters to be recognized. You know, I know many fighters across the state that are professional. They're leaving Tennessee to go find opportunities to go elsewhere. There's just there's no pro events, and I work with every promoter you went down the list on. I personally know and help as much as I can. But the reason they're not doing pro events is it's just too expensive. They for a amateur event, $20,000. If they get the $500 deductible, 10 bouts, it's going to cost a promoter $1,440 for 10 bouts. You never have just 10, but you know, for easy math here.
That's very reasonable.
Yes. If they want to do a pro event, that price is now $4,200. And right there is exactly the reason there's not more professional mixed martial arts going on in Tennessee.
Say
What
that
was the
again now.
professional? Can you say it again? How much
For
for the amateur?
$50,000 and $50,000. $50,000 medical benefit, $50,000 accidental death benefit, $500 deductible, 10 bouts, $4,200.
That's professional.
Yes. That's an expense that comes out of the promoter's pocket before they can even put a single spectator in a seat. You know, before the cage gets in the venue, this is money that they've already had to pay out, you know, the week before. And, you know, I've been talking about with the promoters about this because everyone I've worked with becomes a friend. You know, since I've been here, sitting here with you guys, I've had 3 different promoters from across Tennessee text me different things. And this is the exact reason there's not more professional mixed martial. Nate Jolly, one of the best fighters in our state, been fighting in West Virginia. Can't get a fight here in Tennessee. It's extremely hard. There's no events going on. So, I mean, we have some of the best talent. I work with promoters all across the country. There is hardly any place out there that has everything together like Tennessee does. I mean, the way you guys handle everything's leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else, except for the insurance.
Can I ask one question? We have tossed this around. We've discussed this as a commission previously. It's come up. What are your recommendations?
I recommend, instead of having $50,000 worth of insurance, taking it down to the same level as the amateurs, $20,000, which is still some of the nation's highest. The average is $10,000 in most states.
And let me comment on that. I don't think there's one case off the top of my head that I can think of that umbrellas use $20,000 like the full amount of coverage.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's not
Well,
true.
listen, I can think of one.
I know one.
The leg break? Is that what I can think of?
Yeah,
It happened.
they've been paying
Yeah,
out.
Mark Ball or whatever.
All that.
I'm not familiar with
That's the one that I told you guys about.
That was the reason we budgeted the approach.
Anthony was going to talk a little bit about that one. It was considerably.
What would, if it was 20,000, like what I think I just heard you recommend, let's assume for a minute that was the limit of liability there, if you will. What would that rate be for those same 10 pro bouts versus the 10 amateur bouts?
$2,490.
2,490.
To have 10 amateur bouts at $20,000 and 10 pro bouts at $20,000, there would be a $1,710 difference that the promoters could put towards fighters' purses, so they could actually do the pro events.
Help me to remember why we came up with the 50,000. I remember some of those discussions, but I slept.
Because that's
we
what.
discussed this at length in committee, okay? It was modeled after Nevada. They require 50,000. Now, we're not Nevada. But when you go over to that state legislature, which would be what this is required to take, $10,000 was nothing to them. They were like, somebody gets injured, are you kidding me? That's a ride, an ambulance ride, and an emergency run, and half that's taken up, let alone the guy be injured brain or, internally or something. So that just did not sell. And I brought this up to y'all that we were not getting professional. The boys were complaining, the promoters, that their insurance was too high. That's why they weren't switching over. So we did this pro-am thing, trying to convince them to, go pro if they're going to be paying the same fees. But this is a hard sell because it's not a simple rule change. And those lawmakers, 25 may be suitable if you could show them a majority of the states or 25,000. But when we did it back then, it was like an average of, there was 10, there was 25, and then there was 50, basically. And they went with the 50 just because they wanted to be a state that, and a new commission that stood for safety. And this was heavily debated, and I brought this up a few meetings ago. I said, maybe we need to revisit this because nobody's going professional. But as soon as I brought that up, Jeff, I got an email less than a week later after our commission meeting that someone was severely hurt at an amateur event. So that tossed that thought right out the window and us lessening that cost because we kept on saying, let's put it in our coffers and not insurance coffers is what the conversation we had. But, once that email came around, that kind of just validated. And I think if we are going to go after any kind of legislative change, you're going to have to, one, show them comparable states, our surrounding states, and what their insurance is so that we can compete. That's what will sell them. And also, we're going to have to show them our track record since we've been a commission. What has been paid out? They want to know that to see if we can go in and lessen it a little bit to encourage people. But that was a hard sell, that insurance, and they went with the big number because they wanted to set a stamp that new commission, we want safety.
In the states around us, remember the numbers that I came up for you guys, nobody around us charges anywhere near 50. Nobody that's touching our state.
And I think if you could present a state model like that.
Nevada, California, New Jersey, all the big ones that have the big fights, they all require 50. But Georgia, and like I said, I don't remember the numbers right off the top of my head, but Georgia, South Carolina, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi, Alabama, the ones that are touching our state.
Most every one of those are 10,000.
Yeah, most are 10 or 20, but Georgia's probably 20, right?
Yes.
Georgia's probably 20 because they're a bigger state. But,
I think that it's maybe sellable, realistically, 25 maybe.
The biggest,
but I can't see 10.
Sorry. The biggest claim, I would not suggest 10. My recommendation would be 20,000. But the biggest claim that I have seen since I've been doing this is just over $9,000. And that's not just in Tennessee. That's I have people I work with in every state except for Alaska for some reason. But the biggest claim I've ever seen is $9,000. That's professional or amateur.
There was recently, I believe it was April, there was a really bad event, and I've been asking some questions. When I have a question on insurance, I usually email him and ask him, and just because he knows about all the MMA stuff. So I was asking you about helicopter rides and stuff that were covered and things like that. I asked you several questions.
Yes, sir.
And you were wanting to know if it was one of your policies or wasn't one of your policies.
Yeah, I was starting to freak out that someone didn't send me some paperwork.
But it was this event that I'm talking about. There was a horrific accident, where Mike got hurt. He seemed to be okay. He went back to the dressing room. He's in the dressing room, and he passed out. And they had to airlift him to Nashville. And he recovered. He was fine, but he was actually in a coma for a while. It was an amateur event, and so 20 is a drop in the bucket in his expenses. But he had really good insurance, personal insurance. But it covered a lot of things, but not.
Well, this insurance generally, I guess, is secondary coverage anyway.
It is secondary.
Except in Nevada, but yes. If they have personal insurance, it pays first, then anything's left over this picks up.
So yeah, you're right. So that's a huge amount of secondary insurance if the other person is insured.
And the other thing about that is most insurance carriers, including him, would probably be able, if they don't offer health insurance for a owner that doesn't have it, would be able to direct you to somebody that does. But
that's me also.
Yeah, but in his case, I'm going to be going to him for my personal health insurance, and that way I know, hey, if I'm going to do this fight here, there, or the other, is it going to cover before this one? Will it cover if something crazy happens? So, you can kind of sell fancy points with it, is that it's supposed to be secondary, and if it is secondary, then there's no reason your primary and your secondary shouldn't have ring expenses yet.
Like I said, he's the mixed martial arts insurance expert in Tennessee. When I've got a question, that's who I call. But he actually covers almost everyone in East Tennessee and a lot of people all over the state.
I cover a whole lot of people everywhere.
And he's actually at a lot of the fights in East Tennessee.
Every weekend I'm somewhere else. Not always in Tennessee, but I'm always going out showing my support to the people I work with and showing exactly how to take care of the claims process in a timely manner, everything they need to do right on hand, so there's no questions.
So if they don't have a primary insurance themselves, this takes it as primary.
Yes, if they don't have their own primary insurance, then this is going to take care of everything. They get billed as if they have no insurance. And then this is an accident policy, so assuming they send all the bills to me, which they never do, and I have to hound them, but this is going to turn around and back up, pay everything minus the deductible, which the promoter has to pay.
What percent of fighters do you think? I mean, if you look at national averages,
10%.
Is it 10?
10% on amateur bouts have an incident. Have a claim. It's much less in Tennessee because we have the most amazing cage shot physicians I've ever seen. The cage shot physicians that are working in Tennessee, one out of Johnson City, Dr. Nathan, I can't remember his last name. It's
Elliot.
Yes. It's amazing what these gentlemen can do. So, but most claims are due to lacerations. Yeah, they're due to people being cut open and need stitches.
I guess, at least from where I sit, the million-dollar question is what will our legislators, what will they sign off on? I mean, I guess that's the big question.
Well, the argument's valid. I mean, if those legislatures realize that we're missing the boat, because obviously we continue to struggle with finding ways to generate revenue enough to sustain this body, we show them that may be a reason why. I'm sure they'd be open to it, but then it goes back to who's going to sign up for reducing insurance in the spirit of safety for our fighters. Who's going to sponsor a bill? You know, I mean, like, nobody's going to want to volunteer for that.
You can get it dropped probably, but who's going to lobby the bill? You know, as a commissioner, I can't lobby the bill. Y'all can go over there and, you know, punch in some sponsors' directions and, you know, drop the legislation, but then it's got to be moved through the committee.
One thing
And stand up and testify.
it doesn't make sense to require one number for amateurs, one number for pros. It should be both 50 or both 20. I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the only other state that does this is Texas, and they have 50,000 and 100,000. And there's not very much mixed martial arts that goes on in Texas.
100,000.
What's amateur in Nevada? We modeled it after Nevada, the insurance
Now, a
requirement.
lot of amateur wasn't even in place, was it, when this law, they just started amateur? Well, it might have been about that
We
time.
won a dancing contest and broke it down in language.
Also, there's body in Florida about the same time as amateurs.
I thought we were pretty consistent with other places. We looked at this a lot.
Yeah, we were.
And I want to say we even had some conversations of increasing the amateur at one point.
I
So
think, but
we've
then
been
when we
all
looked
over
at the
place.
numbers, that was the talk.
Yeah.
But then we looked at the numbers all around the state, and they were like the same or less in amateur.
Well-
Yeah, that was the talk. And you guys had me the numbers, so I called every state around here. We got the amateur and the pro, and their amateurs, even the pros, were like 10 and 20.
Could we put that on the agenda to have something to look at for our next meeting, maybe?
Yeah, we
States?
discussed it in March of 2011, that's when you came back with all the prices of the various
Right.
states, but the numbers aren't in our minutes.
Right.
When I was looking back.
Well, I'll tell you what's happening right now, and why you guys are losing a very substantial amount of money, is people are going to Virginia where mixed martial arts is not regulated at all. I mean, they can go in a cage with tasers and a chainsaw if they want to, and no one's going to tell them different. So they'll go over there, they won't even get insurance, and they're taking our fighters over there. I've got an amateur promotion who called me 2 months ago, said, I want to have insurance for my event. I said, spectacular. How much do you want? He said, however much you'll give me for free.
For free?
Yeah. And then I've got another one who apparently was having problems getting people on their show because they had not had insurance in the past, but they wanted the very least amount, and they want they're letting their amateurs use elbows and knees, which does nothing but last week. The boat is leaving. It's going over to Virginia where they can do whatever they want. People are going up to Kentucky where it's $5,000, I believe, off the top of my head, in Kentucky. It's much cheaper up there. And, Virginia, $20, you can have a May event.
Yeah, we looked and we really did some research on this. But to be honest, to buy an amateur is $25, that's not that far off.
Yeah, these numbers you're quoting are different from what I remember us getting, but maybe from other states.
They're back about a year ago. There was a major change in this industry on the insurance side. Just the carriers changed everything completely. Before they would give people a block of insurance for a certain amount of money, and that all changed. And there's a transition that we have recently went through. So.
The other thing is, I'd be more than happy to go to each, every state has a website where you can look up very, very plainly insurance requirements for.
That's actually on my
said
website.
sport.
CombatSportsInsurance.com.
And it's on his as well. You have compiled, about 10 states? That you usually work with?
More than that.
Okay, so, we can give you kind of an idea of what other states are doing in somewhat real time. As long as they've updated their site, you'd have an idea of what it is by the next minute to make it possibly more competitive.
That information, it certainly can't hurt. That's what I was just going to suggest, because now whether or not anybody's willing to.
It can't be like Mississippi. I hear that all the time. Be more like Mississippi or Virginia. But you know what? We set up a legitimate, we're here for a purpose, and we don't want to go back to tough man competitions. Or we all look bad. I don't want somebody hurt in our state and make headline news. Let Virginia and them have a tough man and free for all. I don't want to be a part of that. Not serving on a body that regulates something like that.
I
On
think
the front end of this.
That's the gentleman's point, though. I mean, they're not suggesting we need to be in West Virginia, but, they're definitely need to make sure we're staying current with, because, listen, MMA still is, I've been around it for 12 years, but for the most part, it's still trailblazing, and so I'm sure states are still trying to make adjustments and tweaks when they need to, so maybe we can do the same. I don't know.
I think if we could do 25, that would be a good starting point for both amateur and professional. That would be something that maybe set the board over there and make us more conducive with our surroundings.
Would you like to know what those prices would be? For the,
I'm sorry.
25, yes.
if you had a,
Just like do 10 amateur and then 10 pro, and then do 5 amateur, 5 pro, like a card with just 10 pro fights and nothing else, a card with 10 amateur fights and nothing else, and a card with 5 and 5. Pro.
the price up until 10 is the same with every carrier.
Okay.
But say $25,000, $500 deductible. Amateur would be $1,540 for 10 bouts.
How about 30,000? What would 30,000?
I don't have that in front of me for 30,000. I actually just had a carrier create for West Virginia because there was no $30,000 limit that any carrier offered.
That would be kind of between.
Yeah. And then the pro for $25,000, $25,000 would be $2,600 for 10 bouts.
That's still a lot better than 42, huh?
Still a good savings, and it's still incentive as a promoter to have guys in their state, and incentive to get more pro bouts.
Was that for 25 or for 20?
25. So, we say, well, promoters, you got to pay another $100 for your to put this on mixedmartialarts.com. The good news is you're saving X amount on pro insurance.
But to make all this happen is going to be literally pushing the freight crane up the hill, because you're going to have to find somebody that will craft and sponsor a piece of legislation, and then somebody to champion it through. And so obviously there's going to have to be some homework there.
discuss this more
Sure.
and decide on legislation. We've got a few months before legislation can be
Sure.
dropped. Got to. That way it allows us to do our comparable and see what we can run
It'd
by
be great
the
to get the
industry.
numbers of the other states. I mean,
Fellas, I think that you could be maybe a tremendous asset to this body is just feeding maybe Jeff with just absolutely with as much information as you can get to him. I mean, in terms of what other states are doing, what maybe some of the loss ratios have been, and can be a tremendous help, I think, to get that information to Jeff that he can sort of help educate us as we work through this. I know that I can say that on the amateur boxing side, it's $10,000 unless it's an international event when it goes to $20,000, but it's secondary coverage as well.
And who better to pattern after than USA Boxing?
Well, yeah. I mean, the sports are a little different, but largely the same.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the $50,000 being the insurance salesman, pads my pocket much better. But the thing is, I love the sport. I train with Nate Jolly. I've been a part of the sport for a number of years now. And I have a very unique view on a national level that very few people have the pleasure of having. I get to be very intimate with the workings, with the cultures of each area. I mean, just the political scene is completely different, from area to area. But this one thing right here is why we're losing so much good talent going to other states.
And I'll tell you, I mean, I fought 17 times as a pro, and I would say 3 of them have probably been 3. I mean, no more than 4 have been here, and it's just because if you're not in someone's pocket that can get you on a good pro show here, or you haven't shown it, you got to go somewhere else and show it. It's very hard to get on a pro slot on a card without really selling yourself. Or like I said, you have a manager that's going to take a percentage. But it'd just be nice to be able to let everybody kind of stay and fight their own home state, just like other states. Can kind of promote their own athletes, get them into bigger shows, get them in the UFC, things like that.
Well, you just got to keep in mind too that for those unlucky souls who don't have primary insurance, we'd probably be their best friends if something serious would happen. And I'm with you. I've been in sports all my life, and for the most part, I've been lucky enough that nothing really serious has ever happened. But it's that one time.
Yeah.
So we hear what you're saying. We just want to make sure that we are trying to stay consistent with the other states by just keeping front and center the fact that we want to try to keep our fighters as healthy and safe as we can. Here, the other thing that might help, and I have no idea, Mr. Best, if you're privy to the actuarial, I'm in the insurance business myself. What I find odd is that it's only going up by like 10% premium-wise from the 20,000 to the from the 10 to the 20, and then from the 20. But when it went from 20 to 40, it went up like 67%. So I don't know. I mean, to me, if I'm if I'm somewhere on the hill, have any insurance sense whatsoever, that's going to be a question I'm going to ask, because actuaries price this stuff for a reason. So if it's going up 67%, there's got to be a good reason behind it. I don't know if we can find out anything about that or not, but it just may come up. You just got to realize that the questions that we're going to have to face up there are going to be way beyond what Mississippi's doing, or you know what I'm saying. So,
and the other side, going along with the opposite of what he's saying, is on the front end when they put all this together, they tried to model us after Nevada, New Jersey, California, not after some of the other states we mentioned. So it's one thing to strive to be at this level, or to settle to be at that level. But that's why they had 50, because they were trying to get to those states like Nevada, New Jersey, and California.
I have a lot of people who I work with from the state of Nevada who do all their events in Washington. They don't deal with the Nevada rules or athletic commission and all their. Apparently, the Washington Athletic Commission is much more receptive, and it makes things easier for them. So I only say that because I know you're saying, you know, model yourself out in Nevada. Well, Nevada's a little
Virginia makes it easier than anybody.
Yeah.
And we don't want to do that, do we?
Yeah, you don't want to do that, but you know, West Virginia.
That's not a valid point, I don't think. You know, we're not here to make it easier for the promoters. You know, we're here to make it regulated. So.
Okay, well, we appreciate you guys coming so much, and again, I just encourage you to between now and our next meeting, Jeff, you could compile as much information from these guys so we can decide if we want to wrestle that line, and we can do that.
I will give us like my business cards here.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeremy, I need to talk to you today anyway, so I can get my, yeah, but like I said, we don't make it easy. Our job is not to make it easy for the promoters, but it's not to make it difficult for the promoters too. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying that's not our number one thing. Is just to make it easier.
Yeah, I just wanted to be able to see mixed martial artists in Tennessee be able to grow. I mean, like Nate, one of the greatest fighters in our state, he don't have much of a following. There's some people in West Virginia that love him, which amazes me, but, you know, he's a Tennessee fighter. He can't get a fight in Tennessee. You know, so he cannot grow and flourish in his own area.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thanks, John.
Anthony Manis. Manis is here. You ready? To introduce Anthony, he is the Tennessee representative for the ISKA, who regulate 95%, conservative estimate, 95% of the amateur MMA in the state of Tennessee. So he's the man to give us a report on the amateur in the state of things here in Tennessee.
Yeah, you know, I didn't mean to eavesdrop on your last discussion, but to concur with a very valid point that Mr. Hannah made. You know, you plan for the common, but you prepare for the exception. And unfortunately, one thing I'd like to talk to you guys about today was a very unfortunate event we had in March, in which an amateur fighter from Texas, a heavyweight, fought an amateur fighter here in Nashville. And lucky for me and my organization, it was a very well-run show. It was like all the stars lined up just right. There was no question about the integrity of the gloves because the promoter provided the proper weight gloves, and the referee was Mr. Jonathan Ivey, a very experienced referee. The weights were within less than a pound of each other. Their skill level was very comparable, but they were two very good athletes. And they fought. The whole fight lasted 26 seconds. Jonathan Ivey immediately stopped it once the Texas fighter, Mark Ball, got into trouble. Quick stoppage. The Texas fighter, Mark Ball, never went down. He got rocked seriously. Doctor was immediately in the cage. He responded well. They did let him sit down for a few minutes. He stood back up, congratulated Matt Brown for his win. It was just a typical TKO, or so I thought. I was 15 minutes out of Nashville when the promoter called me and alerted me to the fact that he was being airlifted to Vanderbilt. And it was, the next few hours was probably one of the worst of my life. I immediately called Jeff and my immediate supervisor, the ISK president, Corey Schaefer. The three of us discussed it, and I kept them informed throughout the day. Mark Ball had bleeds on his brain. He had a broken, excuse me, I don't know the exact name of the bone, but it was the bone that your jaw connects to your skull. He had a broke foot also. He did manage to land one kick on the Tennessee guy and broke his foot in doing so. But he was a severely injured young man. He made a full recovery, but the only reason I'm bringing this up was in regards to what Mr. Hannah said. Just, even though he had great coverage, his wife is the facilitator of a rehab unit in Texas, he had great medical insurance. 80% of a 6-day visit at Vanderbilt University is massive. So there's not a bigger fan of this sport in this state than me. I love martial arts, I love boxing, I love combat sports, and I have my whole life. But I have to be very honest. When we think about making any kind of changes, do not forget the welfare of the fighters themselves. Because quite often, they're their own worst enemy. They would fight for no insurance. That's just what they do. But it's people like us that have to sort of watch over them, not sort of. We are charged with watching over them to make sure that they can participate in our state as safely as humanly possible. So having said that, you guys have a big decision, in front of you when you look at that, and I understand that. So,
Do you have any idea what his out-of-pocket was after all the insurance?
I don't think he really knows what all his bills are still coming in. But just the helicopter ride alone was $26,000. And his insurance didn't cover that at all.
$26,000.
Just for the helicopter ride alone. So can you just imagine spending 6 days in a
Where did he fly from?
Cookville? And I thought that was high too. I'll be honest with
That was
a helicopter ride.
Aspens cost, $100
$100.
You gotta imagine.
You gotta fuel.
you. Mr. Smith, I thought the same thing. He was telling me, I'm like, wow. But, I've never been flown in a helicopter, so but I did. I made the same thought. That's pretty high.
So that's the other side of the argument.
But that's the other side of it.
Well,
So that's what you're here to address?
Well, the ISCA's policy has always been to be very forthcoming with state athletic commissions. And we want to be not just a co-regulator, but a promoter of the sport and the safety of the sport. Because Mr. Corey Schaefer, our president, has long recognized, like I said before, a fighter is their own worst enemy. And that's something to take into account.
So what I was going to add when they were talking about insurance and we're speaking about lowering it, and I understand we want to get to a place that encourages events in our state, but I just wanted to add that with our new research on second impact syndrome, which is, you've had one concussion or head injury and then you get hit a second time, and the effects of that might not be seen for a while, and this is really coming out. I think, would you agree with medicine now that, well, I do USA boxing and Golden Gloves and football, and so it's really big where we are, and so I just want to keep in mind that that's going to be coming around when we're talking about making changes. That I don't know what his personal history was and if he had some kind of injury in the past, and that this is what that this was a second injury, but that we might potentially see more of that.
Yeah, that's a fascinating point that you make, because I'm watching the situation with the football player that recently committed suicide. I'm watching that closely because they explore that very possibility. What's the effects of repeated contusions to the brain? We don't really fully understand it. But in Mr. Mark Ball's case, I have suspended him medically for life, indefinitely, until he can find a doctor that will clear him. And I can assure you, in the state of Tennessee, he will never be hit or hit someone else again, legally.
And when you say that they fight, they're their own worst enemy, I mean, when I'm doing boxing, even all the kids, they don't report their concussion that they got last year. And sometimes you can't dig around enough to find that out. It's not until they get hurt in the ring, that comes out.
Nate, how many times have you been knocked out of the gym?
But as far as a possible no, that's not true. It's been a long time. Probably say once. It's probably 4 years ago.
Let me say this. I trained at a boxing gym for a long time. And boxers train different than MMA fighters do. Boxers, professional boxers, they go to war every day. And there's a lot of concussions, a lot of knockouts in the gym, a lot of people getting hurt. And they don't ever report that. They don't ever back off a fight. I mean, there's guys that get concussions in the gym. You know, it's not as bad now, but in years past, like the week before, like a week and a half before a fight, in their last hard week of training, they're getting concussions in the gym. They're easing down the week of a fight. But and I think people are more aware of that now. But
Sir, back in 1979, when I first started training full contact karate, the only sparring partner I had was a heavyweight, and I weighed 145. He's knocked me out twice in one night in the gym. I mean, knocked me goofy. I had to be led off and I'd shake it off, walk it off, get back in the ring, leave, get knocked out again. You know, that may explain a lot of my problems today, but I'm just kidding. But I'm serious about that fact. I was 19 years old. I didn't know the long-term effects of that. If I knew then what I know now, obviously I would have done that. But
Well, I will say the speculum has swung very aggressively to one side with concussions, and certainly looking at football, it's a big deal. Not a lot of the research has been done on boxing in it. It's interesting. I mean, it's potentially a bigger niche, but the research hasn't really been there. But it's a big deal. It's swinging very far to one side as far as the medical legal aspect of it. So we just truly don't know long-term effects at this point. We just don't. But there's a lot of debate about chronic traumatic encephalopathy, those kind of things. So it's something to think about. I will say it's a little frightening though. Before a football game, we clear all these guys. We do impact testing, all sort of. But boxing, used to say they didn't have something in the gym and they just show up. So you're right. It could still be under the effects of something we just never know. The only way you know is, unfortunately, sometimes when something bad happens, and that goes your point even more so.
And from a safety standpoint, there are things that I would like to see in the state of Tennessee. I would like to see all 3 approved amateur regulatory bodies be required to have at least 2 representatives at every show. Now that's going to increase the cost for the promoter, but there's no way one person, in my opinion, can do an adequate job of like the job that Jeff and these guys do at Pro. There should be at least as equal amount of protection and safety precautions for amateurs as there are pros. This is my opinion. I love working pro am in jail because of all the extra people there. There's more eyes. If it's just me and Jeff, now there's 4 eyes. If it's me, Jeff, and Steve, now there's 6 eyes. And the more people there watching, the more you can catch, the more safe I think it is.
when Anthony has to regulate a fight all by himself, all the fighters have to get their raps signed off with him at ringside. So he's got to do the work of the guy in the back and the guy in front when he's regulating the amateur all by himself. That's what he's talking about, where maybe they have 2 people.
And Jeff has seen me do this many times. I'm watching, and a guy will tap me on the shoulder with his hands, and I have to go, in a line forms, because I can't take my eyes off what's going on in the cage until the second that bell rings. And even then, as I'm inspecting his wraps, I need to be watching those corners. I don't need to be doing that. That's just one example. So that would be a suggestion I wish you guys would look at. Now we can do it, individually. The ICAA can say, okay, we're just now going to require 2 reps. Well, in a real world, then the promoter's going to go, well, the WKA doesn't, or the ICF. There's no one blame them. That's just an added cost for them.
They're going to sanction body shop.
Yeah, unless it's done unilaterally across the board, they're just going to go to the cheapest source. And like I said, that's no slam on them. That's just good business sense. That's why I'd like to see it done on a state level. That to operate the state of Tennessee, that's a minimum requirement.
So that's 2 big sides that we look at of the insurance. Is the side that they represented is it helps the promoter and brings us more fights, especially the smaller fights, if the insurance is dropped. And the other side that he's bringing us is even if they have good insurance, they could still be out of some huge out of pocket with $20,000, at 80% or or whatever. They could still be out of some huge out of pocket insurance if they don't have other insurance.
And
So we have to weigh those two things. The fighter and the promoter, we have to protect them both.
Jeff, talked to me a lot in the hours and days after that incident. And Jeff and I have known each other for many years, and I'm sure you will say you could clearly tell I was shook up. I was devastated about that.
I was driving home from Nashville that night. It was about maybe 1 or 2 in the morning. Like 1 in the morning, he called me, and we stayed in contact. He called me several times on the ride home. Called me, after I got home, like 3 or 4 in the morning. We talked the next day all day. And Sunday and Monday, it was. And I think I emailed you guys that Monday or Wednesday or whatever when I knew more what was going on. I emailed the entire commission. But
the most unsettling fact that I was left with that whole situation was having been I started amateur boxing when I was 12, been in 52 now, so you're talking 40 years in combative sports. I have seen hundreds, if not maybe even thousands of knockouts, far worse than that. Far worse. That referee was on the spot. Everything was just a textbook stoppage. Everything's fine. So if a guy can get hurt that bad, it's nothing short of a miracle that someone hasn't been hurt worse in some of these brutal knockouts. That's why, since that day, I have a lecture that every referee in the state of Tennessee that's worked with me, they'll know. You can't stop that fight too quick for me. You let me take the heat. I'll explain to them that they're amateur fighters, that this is not the UFC and there's not $3 million on the line here. I want you to be able to do tomorrow everything you can do today. I never want to have to explain to a wife or a mother again, why their husband, father, son is fighting for their life.
Well, I don't think there's any question of your commitment to the sport and service to the states. We appreciate the comments and being here today. Are there any other points or questions?
I'll just piggyback on what he said. I rectified about 2.5 years ago down in South Carolina, and the fight lasted about 41 seconds. I got hit 7 times while watching the match. Anyway, 3 days later, the kid died. He got up, he set up in the cage, said, "Hey, you all right?" He said, "Yeah, I'm good." Looked at me, passed me out, and went back up. I think what you're finding that happens a lot here, though, is what happened in this guy's case is that they just weren't being honest with their doctors, and because before every fight, no matter whether you fought 50 times or 1 time before, you haven't been knocked out in the last 30 days. So you have to answer all these, it's like 50 questions. They just kind of rattle off to you. And when it comes down to it, he got knocked out 3 or 4 times before. They didn't exactly have a great change in it. And I think a lot of these incidents like that often attributed back to someone not being honest about what's going on. And partially that's because you don't want to look like you don't want to fight, and if you're afraid you have any money. So I definitely understand what Mr. Ness is talking about. At the same time, I do think that's probably the exception.
Absolutely.
That's definitely one of those very exceptions that they should be considered for.
That's a good point. It's certainly the exception.
Guys, again, we would encourage you to feed our director with all the information that you can give to him and Jeff at our next meeting. Maybe if you'd be prepared to help us roll our sleeves up and revisit this issue, and then, whatever we decide to do, it's probably going to be laborious up on top of the hill to make any major changes anyway.
Can I also get a copy of what you say they go down before each fight? Have you been knocked out? Honestly, less than 10% of concussions actually have a loss of consciousness. So 90+% are not going to be knocked out. So we may need to review kind of some of the stuff they're going by. Maybe we can catch some of the stuff up front.
I've got the medical that we give the fighters the day of the fight. I've got the list that the doctor uses. So I'll email that to you. I'll scan it, email it to you. And it's Dr. Frauwer came up with it. He patterned it after. I think he patterned it. I'm sure he patterned it after California.
Maybe it's worth looking at and seeing if it's.
Yeah, because things have changed so much. Like he was talking about, they asked questions about if you had it knocked out in the last 30 days, or if you've been knocked out 45 days ago. You know, they're all the new,
31 days ago.
yeah, 31 days ago.
Thank you, guys. Okay, what else we got, gentlemen, ladies? Looks like it's time for us to elect a new chairman and a new vice chairman.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Smith. It's timely. There's a more formal process. I'm open to it, but
Second thing.
I've enjoyed his leadership over the years. Nobody knows.
Well, thank you. So for making sure we have an appropriate protocol, how do we do that, Ed? Me sitting in the chair.
You could, let's say you're
I'm the vice chair
the
now.
vice chair now, you have to appoint someone to act as chair and they conduct the vote.
Okay. So, Dr. Fitch, would you be willing to do that?
Sure. So I have a motion on the floor for Mr. Smith to be the next chairman. Can I get another second, since
Second.
that was your first second, I guess.
I second.
We have a second.
Let's call to a vote.
For back nominations, Stacy.
Any additional nominations?
Generally, that question is asked 3 times.
Do we have other commissioners on the phone or available?
Ms. Bass is out, and that's it.
And this is what we need for a quorum? Okay.
Any additional nominations? Third call for additional nominations. We have a motion and a second on the floor for Mr. Smith to be the next chairman. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion approved. Congratulations.
We usually like the vice chair also.
Make a motion to Ms. Bass, she's not here, but I know she's been active. I don't know how to do that. Is she still outside on the phone or?
I think she said she had to go back up to the governor's office.
Table that.
The other nominations?
I would nominate Dr. Fitch if it's something that people want to entertain.
Yeah, one of my roles on this has been, I've learned a lot, I will say that. But I think as we go to 5, I think it'd be important to have folks with a lot of experience in this, and I don't know that I'm one of them.
Well, I think from the matter of setting as the chair or the vice chair, it's just a parliamentary thing. I mean, just the duties are no more than just
If I have some adequate guidance, which I've had.
Dr. Fitch, I think that you would be fine. It's just a matter of chairing the meeting. There's no more other duties, correct me if I'm wrong, in being the chair than just that, than just chairing these meetings. So I would like to second Steve's motion that we second.
So you probably can't take the vote on that.
I'll go back, right, okay. All right, so I have a nomination for, and a second for Dr. Fitch to be our vice chair. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There are none. Congratulations, Dr. Fitch.
Thank you. Lead me.
The main thing you gotta do when you're in chair is you gotta listen to my phone calls.
I just gotta learn I gotta learn the motions and regulatory talk. I'll do my best. Thank
What
you.
do you use for minutes?
Um,
I mean, our order, I mean, it's kind of general, but do we use Robert's or is somebody else?
Okay, anything else we need to discuss, or any other matters of business or announcements, or? Okay, here none, I'll entertain a motion that we adjourn.
second.
Okay. So moved, let's go to the house.